it does kind of leave the question of what, did we lose out on a potential dynasty? Right? Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. I'm your boy Dom, and we're going to get right into things here today. So, today, we are going to be talking about Aaron Gordon and the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, a couple days ago, he got paid a pretty hefty load for his contract. Comes out to be, I wanted to say it was a $94 million extension, where he's going to be making over $20 million a year. And it's pretty interesting, right? It definitely puts the Nuggets in a interesting situation where they have to win with the team that they have now, right? It really takes away a lot of the flexibility, and so it's interesting, like I've kind of said a few times now. But if we look at what he did last season, after being acquired from the Orlando Magic, he came over to the Nuggets, and he played 50 out of the 72 games last season. And then he had about 10 points per game, half a block, half a steal, 2 assists, and 5 rebounds. About 5 rebounds. So he, to say the least, was a little bit disappointing when we got him. When we initially got him, he played super well for the first few stretch of games, and then he kind of cooled off, and didn't really ever, I feel like, heat back up quite to where the level that you might have wanted a guy like him to get up to, right? Now, I don't think anybody thinks he's a star player, and even in today's NBA, $20 million isn't necessarily a star player. It's for, a really good starting caliber player, right? Terry Rozier is making similar money. Other guys across the league are making that type of money as well. And I'd rather have Aaron Gordon than Terry Rozier. So it's not like that's the problem. It's first off, the Michael Porter Jr. extension needs to get done by Denver's front office, if you wanted to go this route of kind of keeping the team fully together. But it's more of, why would you have not just paid Jeremy Grant all that money, right? Obviously, we gave him the same contract offer that the Detroit Pistons gave him, and he decided to go to the Detroit, and showed that he could be an all-star level player, and, really showed his offensive game, which is what I think he went there to do, and he accomplished that. But I think if you pay him a little bit more than Detroit's willing to, he comes back, and although we don't know at that point that he would have been or developed into the player that he was this last season, I still think that I would have preferred that player over Aaron Gordon. Now, that's a lot due to just, Aaron Gordon's good defensively, but Jeremy Grant, I think, is just on another level from Aaron Gordon defensively, right? He can guard 1 through 5 most nights, and Aaron Gordon's got a little bit more, mass to him at that power forward position than like a Jeremy Grant does, so that helps him guarding centers and stuff. But I still think that Grant's length and just defensive prowess was super, shown very well in the bubble when the Nuggets had him, and then we all kind of hoped that we'd be able to keep that around, and obviously he left, and he went and did what was best for him, so shout out to him, I guess. But just something that I still think the Nuggets should have done, but obviously the Nuggets didn't. We have Aaron Gordon on this contract, and now we kind of have to talk about what that's going to look like. So if we're looking at it like this, Jamal Murray most likely will miss the entirety of the season. Maybe he plays in the playoffs, maybe a little bit before the playoffs. I'd be shocked if we don't just sit him the whole season, though. Would be what I'm kind of thinking. That does put Aaron Gordon as the third player on this team to be making $20+ million, along with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Obviously, Will Barton's extension gives him about $15 a year, for the next couple years, and I'd expect for Michael Porter Jr.'s extension to be in the ballpark of Jamal Murray's extension, maybe a little bit less, but I think Porter Jr., as I've kind of stated in a previous video, just has that potential to, grasp the team as our primary outside scorer, especially next to like Jokic and Murray and stuff like that, to have these years to develop next to them, and kind of refine some of his game that he didn't, have to use before he got drafted, right? Because obviously when he was coming into the league, before he got injured, he was projected to be the #1 pick. He comes into the league at the 14th pick or the 15th pick, whatever the hell, was right out of the lottery. Right past the Clippers, where the Clippers passed on him twice, and he's come out recently and said, hey, I want to be the best draft pick for the Nuggets. I want to be good for the Nuggets, and, the Clippers trainer screwed up when he tried to evaluate me, right? And that's, you can't love to see anything more than that, and so that just, I think, reassures a lot of Nuggets fans that, he's going to get his extension done at some point this season, and this will kind of be our core going into the future. That does not leave a lot of money, though, to kind of flex around with the small forward position once Barton's gone, right? That obviously once Barton leaves, you'd think that $15 million would clear up, but having Monte, you'd still have Monte under contract for about $10 million a season at that point. You're gonna have to re-sign Jokic right around that time as well, as his contract ends in 2023, and so does Barton. So Jokic will be due for a max contract at that point, and Murray will be making $30+ million at that point as well. Again, depending on how Michael Porter Jr. extension goes, that would be putting him in the ballpark of three $30 million players, and potentially, I guess Aaron Gordon's contract, it's not updated on here. But yeah, I don't know. Do we have the money? I'm not a cap guru, but I'm just like, do we have the money to pay $110 million to 4 players and still have $10 million to Monte? So that's $120 million to 5 players and not even have a starting lineup, because you still need, not the small forward position. That's where Porter will play. But shooting guard position, right? You still need that shooting guard next to Murray, and if you're gonna play Murray at the 2, he's tall enough to play it, and that'll work, but that just gives you no money for the bench at that point, and you haven't really shown, as the Nuggets haven't really shown, to prioritize like a shooting guard or a small forward type of player. You've, in the draft, prioritized point guards and power forwards, right? Bol, power forward / center, drafted him. Zeke Naji, power forward / center, we drafted him. RJ Hampton was a point guard that we drafted and traded away. And then Nahshon Highland, I think, is, I'm pretty sure, supposed to be just mostly a point guard. So that's, and then even Marcus Howard, a guy who we picked up off of undrafted as a young guy, is a small point guard, right? So that's no real wing depth as you kind of build into the future. And obviously, there's always stuff that'll open up and there will be more drafts, but it does kind of leave the question of what, did we lose out on a potential dynasty, right? If we would have kept Grant around, or would that have, potentially worked better for us, because he can slide around positionally a little bit more than Gordon can? Or does paying Gordon this much, should we have paid Gordon less so that we had some money, so that in the future, because although there is a priority of keeping things together, now, and, doing stuff and whatever, but, this next season, I really wouldn't expect us to contend for the championship without having Murray. And the season after that, you hope Murray gets back to where he was, and that's what we'll base it off of. But he could not get back to where he was, right? But if he gets back to where he was, even that next season, I think we'd be a championship contender. But it still leaves that potential where that's Barton's last year, right? So you really have one more contending year with Barton, and then you've got to repay Jokic and flex the whole team around, which is just concerning, right? To say the least, it's concerning. If the Nuggets are going to be able to keep things together, are going to be able to try and contend, and like I said, I don't think the Aaron Gordon contract was too much of an overpay. I think it was a slight overpay. And now, if you're just looking at his stats, you'd say that's a huge overpay to pay a guy making or getting you 10 points and 5 rebounds, $90 million. But it's what he kind of does all around, where he can kind of be that lob threat. He can be a good defensive player. He can occasionally shoot the 3 ball. He, can cut from like opposite sides, and is just great in use with Jokic, right? His skill set, I think, complements Jokic a little bit more than what Grant's did. Whereas Grant's was more like, oh, I play the other side of the ball from Jokic type of thing. But it's just, it's scary, I think, looking at our cap situation as a Nuggets fan, because of what I said. Just the future is very, very questionable. And I mean, if Porter comes out and does what I think he's going to do this year, his extension is going to be very on par with Jamal Murray's. And that just leaves a door for a lot of issues to arise when you're paying, these few guys this much money. And you start losing out on depth, right? You start kind of losing part of what you are, right? Because the Nuggets, a few years ago, we were the depth team of the NBA, right? If you were going on even in 2K, if you were going to go do an expansion draft or whatever and draft a bunch of guys, well, you could set it to 10, and chances are you're still going to get 2 78 plus overalls from the Nuggets a few years ago, right? Guys like Malik Beasley, Gary Harris, even Michael Porter Jr. at that point, right? They were, and now 2K's expansion thing is terrible and can never be right. But even like a Juancho Hernangomez, like a decent role player, we were the definition of depth a few years ago, and that's slowly started to dwindle away. Although I think we've kind of tried to replace it and stuff. The depth is older than it was, which has its benefits and its negatives. But one of those negatives is the time that you'll have that depth, right? When you have 25-year-olds and stuff, your depth looks good for, you re-sign these guys, your depth looks good for a while. Whereas if your depth is 32-year-old guys like JaMychal Green, 5-year-old guys like Jeff Green, it puts you in a position where you have to keep finding those good depth pieces. And that is just more work that your front office has to do. So hopefully, I think the front office has shown good competence, really since moving Jokic to a starter, right? Just the building of the team to get us to where we are now. Can the front office try and help us make that next step to become a championship team? Now, I think those 4 guys can do it, but it's, in Murray, Porter, Jokic, and Gordon, with the rest of the roster a little, flexible at that point. It's just, I don't even know how to phrase it. It's going to really depend on the role players that we can get next to them, and just the front the ball's in the front office's hands now, with the Aaron Gordon contract. A lot in the air, ball's in their hand, and it's up to them to make a move and make it work. And I'm not even saying necessarily make a move anytime soon, but I'm saying after this season, run it back one more time, and then if that isn't successful, or if Barton decides to leave at that point, if you can get Barton back on a cheaper contract at that point, that still would work, but he'd be going into being, I want to say 32 or 33 at that point, which, you're starting to tick down his days left in the league, as you start passing that 32 mark. Even some guys as you start passing 30. Now, not quite as much for him. I think his game will translate very decently for the next couple of years, but it's good. Yeah, you just have to be very, very smart on how you're doing it, or you end up with a Minnesota Timberwolves type of situation, right? Where the Timberwolves have, ever since they got Karl Anthony Towns, they've tried building around him. They've traded for Jimmy Butler, right? That obviously didn't work out because they're, you know, according to Jimmy Butler, their work ethics did not align, right? Karl-Anthony Towns did not show Jimmy Butler that he had the work ethic. And same with the Wiggins and stuff like that. But you've also traded for D'Angelo Russell. You've drafted a #1 overall pick in Anthony Edwards. You've, you know, made all these moves throughout the years, and none of them have resulted in more than one playoff appearance for the Timberwolves. And you could, you know, in a worst case scenario, you see something like that happening with the Nuggets. Now, I don't think quite to that extent. I think there's just too much talent on this team, when healthy, not to make the playoffs, even if you only have those 4 players and a bunch of just guys that are minimum level contracts that most players don't even want to sign. Even I think that team still just has too much talent to not make the playoffs. But is your goal to just make the playoffs, or do you want to try and bring one to Denver, try and go win one, right? And I think the front office has to answer that question. I think right now they're showing that they want to win one. It's how far in the future are they looking is the #1 thing. So I'm glad that they kept it together. I don't think the contract's too much of an overpay, and I think it was a smart decision by them. But they're gonna have to really lock in for the next 3 years or so. And obviously staying in the future, but really for the next 3 years, if you want to try and win a championship with Jokic, you're going to need to lock in. And so with that said, it's been your boy Dom from NBA Now. This video was kind of a little bit different, more of me just being a Nuggets fan. I haven't, I feel like, shown that too much on this channel, so I kind of just wanted to, give this video just that little feel to it. If you guys want to see more on that, let me know. To be honest, I'm not, this is kind of the end of the video, so I'm not expecting this video to do insanely great, but I just kind of wanted to talk about the situation, and so that's what I did. It's one of the newer things to happen in the NBA, as obviously we are in the dead of the off season. And yeah, looking forward to next season as a Nuggets fan, looking forward to next NBA season as a whole. And so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch y'all tomorrow. Peace out.